This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast.
The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast.
With Stuart Cameron and Robin Purdy.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast, looking at the top three divisions in Scottish Club Rugby, hearing from the coaches ahead of their games tomorrow. And with me, as usual, is Robin Purdy. And let's go over the results, first of all, from last weekend, and more than a few which raised eyebrows. So in the Premiership, that was Currie 24, HERIOT'S 19, GHA 41, Kelso 27, Hawick 18, Selkirk 17, Melrose 14, Ayr 28, and Watsonians 17, Glasgow Hawks 8. That means the Premiership table sees Ayr at the top with 15 points, the only club which has managed a try bonus in each of their games so far. Watsonians in second, Currie in third, GHA in fourth. They all have 14 points. Then there's a gap to Melrose on 6 points in fifth place, sixth it's Hawick with 5, Kelso in seventh with 5, Selkirk in eighth place on 2, and Glasgow Hawks in ninth, HERIOT'S in 10th, and they both have 1 point each. Now 4 teams still unbeaten. Incredibly, after just 3 rounds, those 4 have opened up an 8-point gap. I didn't see that coming at all. Ayr, as you mentioned, the only team with a 100% record in terms of bonus points, but I still think that we're halfway through getting the true picture. I think it's going to take 6 games, because you look at Glasgow Hawks, for instance, they've played the big guns already, and similarly at the bottom, HERIOT'S have also played big teams. GHA, of course, have played the border sides, and they're up in the top 4.
Yeah, I think you're right, Stuart. I think any season it takes a good 6 or 7 games, but let's not forget we're in a 10-team league now, so we're almost a quarter of the way through. It's the old adage almost, would you not rather have the points in the bag than have the games in hand, if you see what I mean?
It's a psychological thing, isn't it?
It is, and there's an 8-point gap now between fourth and the rest. That's a few points to claw back, and there's big games for a few teams this weekend in terms of whether it's their playoff aspirations or indeed they're keeping out of trouble. Because I look at GHA specifically, and they've thrown a cat among the pigeons. They're 3 from 3. And, nobody would think of them as playoff contenders pre-season, but, they're winning rugby matches. And there's teams towards the bottom that would have been looking, as I said, so far this season, teams that have been looking at them coming up and thinking, well, promoted team, as long as we're no worse than the promoted team, well, that's out the window. Let's make no bones about it. GHA are safe.
We've seen teams go through the whole season without getting 14 points.
And they've got another 15 games to accumulate more, but they've got 14 points from 3 games. GHA are safe. There's no two ways. In my opinion, there's no two ways about that. So there's teams now that were looking at them as a possibility of finish below them. They've got plenty to think about. So I think we're already getting to that stage of the season, Stuart, where you're starting to look at what are our winnable games, how many games do we need to win, and what games realistically are winnable, and starting to put a circle around them on the calendar.
Really interesting. Now, of course, our commentary match last week, Melrose against Ayr, it was 14-all till pretty fairly late in the game, and then a couple of scores late on, and boom, Ayr do what they do. As champions, of course, they got away, and Melrose ended up with nothing, which was no consolation for a really good performance for them. Yeah,
it was a really good performance. From a Melrose perspective, they did. They came away with nothing from the game. They could and possibly should have came away with a point. Wonderful last-ditch tackle at the end there deprived them of at least a losing bonus point.
That was Johnson, wasn't it?
It was Johnson, yeah, on young McTaggart. Young McTaggart was absolutely outstanding as a side note. But Melrose came away with nothing from the game, but they can take a lot from the game. But as I said to Herdy in commentary, to use a golfing phrase, as far as Ayr is concerned, there's no pictures on a scorecard. There's not an asterisk next to that 5 points to say, oh, they didn't play their best. There's 5 points there, and they march on relentlessly. And they didn't hit their straps absolutely, but they came away with the green yards, like I say, with 5 points. And they'll dish out bigger hidings to a lot of teams, so Melrose can take some solace from that. But Ayr march on. What more can you say? They reverted to the power game in the second half, the thing that stands them well, and they've got that in their arsenal. You've got it, why not flaunt it? And some of the boys that they brought off the bench really made a difference.
National 1 then, here are the results from last week. Biggar 45, Jed-Forest 25, Boroughmuir 46, Musselburgh 42, Gala 7, Stirling County 92, Glasgow Accies 0, Edinburgh Accies 34, and Marr 70, Gordonians 40. We have Edinburgh Accies at the top with 10, Marr also have 10 in second place, both with try bonuses. On 9 points, Stirling County in third, fourth are Biggar on 6, fifth Musselburgh also 6. 6th Boroughmuir with 6, and 7th Glasgow Accies, who dropped from 1st to 7th place. They have the 5 points from their opening match. In 8th position, Jed-Forest have 1. Gordonians also have 1, with a position of 9th, and Gala at the bottom with nothing at all at the moment. Some extraordinary results in that division there.
Plenty of points anyway, that's for sure. Where'd you begin with that? Fancied Biggar to beat Jed. Boroughmuir v Musselburgh, that's been a good game. Good win that for Boroughmuir. I don't fancy them to be in the relegation shake-up this season. Gala, that's one to just chalk off and move on to the next one. Fancy Stirling to win that, but maybe not by a scoreline as much as that. That's a sore one to take at Netherdale. Result of the day in all the divisions for me: Edinburgh Accies nilling Glasgow Accies at home in the Accies derby, as you referred it to. Fancied Accies, Edinburgh Accies to maybe doing it again this week. Fancied Edinburgh Accies to shade that one, but I didn't see a 34-0. That's a statement win for me. And Marr, it's sort of hard to say flying under the radar as a relegated team, but more talk probably about Stirling, more talk about Edinburgh Accies, but Marr have made a flying start as well. Absolutely fair play to them.
110 points in one game. Have we seen that in club rugby before? I've been going back through the books and I can't find one.
It's a lot of points in one game. Basketball stuff there by the looks of things. I think that's a good point for, you don't want to ship 70 points ever, but I said on this podcast last week that if Gordonians get out of there with anything, then that represents a good afternoon's work. And if you lose by a point and get 1 bonus point, or you lose by 30 points and get 1 bonus point, it's just about the same to me, to be honest. So that looks, no bad point accumulated at Marr there as well.
More from Gordonians a little bit later on as well, and some great chat from the coaches and National 1, so stay tuned for that. The National 2 results, which we'll give you from last week: Falkirk 27, Highland 28, and in that one Falkirk were actually 21-0 up, so Highland came back to edge that. GHK 18, Newton Stewart 13, Howe 5 43, Peebles 39. Again, Howe 5 were miles ahead. Peebles came back and almost nicked it, but they didn't. They did get 2 points out of that game though. Kirkcaldy 43, Berwick 19, and Stumell 32, Dundee 21, and that means that Highland top of the table with 10 points. Congratulations to them. Second, GHK on 9, third Falkirk with 6, fourth Kirkcaldy on 6, fifth Howe 5 with 6, sixth Dundee with 5, seventh Newton Stewart with 5, eighth Stewart's Melville with 5, ninth Peebles with 2, and 10th Berwick with nothing at all. But what is interesting there, between third and 8th place, you've got 1 point separating them, and it's one of these typical leagues where anyone can take points off anyone else.
Yeah, we said that at the start of the season. This was a good division last season as well, and it looks like it's shaping up to be the same after 2 games this year. I think that's a really good win on the road for Highland. I think they were behind for a lot of that game. I can see Falkirk being there or thereabouts this season, some of the personnel that they have, so that's a good win on the road for the Inverness men. GHK, we've referred to them as the unknown quantity. They've had a great start to the season, but if I probably result of the day in that division, promoted Howe Fife, winning against relegated from the division above Peebles. A great result for them, that.
So that was last weekend. We now move on to tomorrow's games, and let's begin with our commentary match. It's Kelso versus Melrose at Poynter Park, which, as we'll discuss in a minute, will have huge consequences attached to the result of this one. Let's hear, first of all, from Director of Rugby at Kelso, Neill Hinnigan, and then the turn of Melrose co-head coach Scott Wight.
We hope for a big crowd at Poynter again. I'm sure Melrose will bring a few supporters with them as well, which adds to the occasion. Last week up at GHA and the previous 2 weeks in general, I don't think we've performed as well as we could. A few frustrations in there amongst the squad that they feel they can do better. We are fortunate to have a really good group of guys that really want to do their best for Kelso, and hopefully something that they can build on from the last 3 weeks. We have picked up 5 points. We definitely need a few more at this stage of the season, but the players are aware of that. We're very much behind them in every facet. We think we can really kick on from here, and we hope to start to pick up points more regularly as the next few weeks come ahead. We have 2 home matches coming up now, Melrose and Selkirk, so very important matches. And then we head way up to Hawks after the break. So it's going to be an interesting few weeks, and as I say, we really need to start picking up a few points in amongst these games, hopefully starting on Saturday at home to Melrose.
Performance-wise, probably the best performance we've given this season. Result obviously wasn't ideal and not the outcome we wanted. I think as a coaching team we really delivered a really accurate game plan with a real clear goal and how to beat Ayr, and I think the boys executed that really well. Really proud of the performance. As I've said from week one, though, it's all about consistency, as we know. Beat HERIOT'S week one, go to GHA. If you're slightly off it physically or mentally, you get beaten those games, and that's essentially where we've got to be this week in terms of going down to Kelso, border derby. And I think it's all about what we can do to be in that right mindset and physicality and mentality as we were on Saturday to put our best performance out. And as I've said every week, I think if we put a performance out there, the reality is we'll be close in getting a result. Boys are, they're a bit high up. They put in a huge amount of effort on Saturday, and they're really keen to get going again. And no better way to do it in a border derby, which will be physical, and we've got to front up straight. We've got to front up right from the get-go, as we found out last year. The boys are excited for it. Saturday's obviously come with a bit of cost to it. Rory Barrett will miss out through injury, so Paddy Anderson will come straight in at 12. The rest of the back line will stay the same. Rory McCaffrey released again. Looks like we'll get Ben Wight as well. With that as well, Kelso obviously getting Neill Moncrief, Isaac Coates and Jack Hutchinson in terms of the draft this week. So it's looking like it'll be an exciting game. Young Ollie Anderson, who I thought was outstanding from the start last week in his first start at 18-year-old at tight head prop, he'll unfortunately miss out due to a head knock, so he'll actually be out for the next 3 weeks. So we're still waiting on the fitness of Zen, which will obviously be a big one. Ben White's released, so Ben White will obviously, be in the mix in terms of prop-wise. So prop's still up for debate whether Jack Dobie goes there, whether Zen starts, whether Jack's at loose head or Ben. So a bit of tossing and turning there. Middle rows will stay the same, and then we're waiting on a late fitness test with Ollie Furness. But good to have Angus Weir's back this week. Sam Derrick obviously performed well off the bench, as well did Thomas Brown. So we've got a few options there. We just need to finalise what that will look like. A huge excitement, hoping to get the result.
Scott White, notifications coming in on his phone there, left, right and centre, but I mentioned consequences surrounding the result of this one. That's no word of a lie, is it?
I agree, Stuart. This is a really big game. It's so early in the season from a couple of points of view. Is there a perception, or is it maybe just my perception that Melrose have started pretty well, Kelso have maybe not started quite so well. Well, there's a point between them, and if Kelso beat Melrose, then all of a sudden Kelso are 2 from 4 and Melrose are 1 from 4. So we're talking about Melrose's playoff aspirations. Well, 1 from 4 is not playoff form, and we're talking about Kelso maybe being further down the table. So it's a big game for both these teams, absolutely. I agree when you'll expect it to be a big crowd. I'm really looking forward to this tomorrow. Arguably my favourite place to go on a Saturday afternoon, just because of the buzz and the atmosphere around the place. Big crowd, pretty vociferous, I would imagine. Kelso will, if they've got those boys that Scott mentioned, they will be strengthened by that. Utterson in particular, if he's going to pack down at hooker, that's a big coup for them. Melrose last Saturday, Corey Goldsborough was absolutely sensational. Loman McPherson must have played like Lomu for Watsonians to get in the offside line dream team, outside centre before Goldsborough. Xander McTaggart as well, 18-year-old flanker, outstanding work rate, unbelievable. People have been tipping him for a big future, and I can see it, but if it'd been at the Green Yards, I'd have fancied Melrose. But Kelso, if they've got the young pros in there and they're at home, really tough to call.
It's an interesting one, but what are you going for?
If Melrose can get parity up front and get that back line going, then Melrose to shade it. Brett out, however, is a big blow for them, but then again they've got the squad that brings Paddy Anderson in. Not a bad replacement. I'm
going for score draw. How about that? 3 points each. There we go. Talk about sitting on the fence.
Yep.
Well, that's our commentary match tomorrow on Rugby Radio, starting at 2:30 all the way through till 5. Don't forget, we now have our 7 o'clock roundup show where we go over all the results and the tables and hear from players and coaches. There'll be highlights on Borders Rugby TV tomorrow night and also on Monday on ITV. Now, next up, Ayr versus Currie. 3 games gone and both undefeated, and last weekend both sides didn't find it easy going in their games. Let's hear what the 2 head coaches have to say about last week and of course this weekend. Currie's Mark Cairns and first Ayr boss Grant Anderson.
We're pleased with the victory last week down at the Green Yards. Pretty spirited Melrose side, which we expected. Come away with 5 points. We were pleased. Had a good review on Tuesday night and a good session after that, and then our attention fully turns to Currie on Saturday. We know that Currie have a particular brand of rugby that they like to play. They do it very well and effectively, with their scrum half probably being one of the best players in the league. So we saw when he goes off the pitch what happens to their game. So we'll need to be really vigilant about his attacking threat. They've got threats all over the pitch, so we'll make sure we're prepared and then try and get our system functioning properly in attack and defence in what should be a good game. We're looking forward to get back to Mowbray. It's two away games in a row that we've had. Unfortunately, we've come away with what we're looking for, so looking to back that up with a good win at home. Hopefully there's a big crowd and we can put on a performance that our fans can be proud of.
We really appreciate Ayr as a club. They lead the way in a lot of aspects of the club game in Scotland. It's a very good setup there. They always get big crowds. They seem to have a very good commercial model where they get best use of their clubhouse and other assets, and they've developed very good local connections as well to universities and other areas. So that's something we look towards as a community club as well. And they've got a very good coaching team. They've recruited some great players, and so we're under no illusion about how hard a fixture it's going to be. The last 2 times we've played against Ayr, we have competed well. We've won at home, and they'll be sick of hearing about that. And I'm sure that'll be a motivation for them. And then we've competed really hard in the semi-final. I think the reflections after both of those fixtures has been a bit under par and caught a bit cold. But I want to make sure we give credit to ourselves for that as well. I think Ayr bring out the best in us as a team, and we appreciate the levels that they play at, because that gets us to step up to a level as well. What they've definitely got is consistency of performance, and you've seen that to the start of the season, and they seem to have an extra gear at times, especially with their power game, but they are obviously evolving their offload game as well. So it's set up to be a really good fixture. We'll find out where we're at. It's not a winner takes all situation like the semi-final last year, and we've had a few games into the season, unlike when we played against them at Millbrae at the start of last year. So it's not a bad time to get there and find out where we're at with a long season ahead of us. But we're going to be really up for the fight. Yeah, hopefully it'll be a good game for the spectators and a good advert for club rugby.
Well, one exciting match ahead of us there. Of course, just to take you back to last week, Currie were way in front for a while. Then HERIOT'S really came back at them and got within 5 points. It was 14-14 at the Green Yards, and then Ayr shifted away in the last 20 minutes or so. So both were tested last week.
Oh, definitely, and that's good to see. You know, I fancy them both to be in the top 3, if not the top 2, come the end of the regular season. So this for me is game of the day. Tomorrow, what an occasion it will be. Ayr, you know, they've been on the road. They've had 2 very tough games on the road. They'll be delighted to get back to Melrose, like I say, and you know they can't do any more than get 15 points from the first 3 games, and they found the different way to win. You know, they weren't up against it, but they were in a game and they still managed to pull clear. And Currie have done the same. You know, any win against HERIOT'S, home or away, is a good win. And yeah, Currie look to be in a good place as a club at the moment. And yeah, this is a battle of the Titans at the moment. You know, probably the 2 biggest packs in the division, and they'll go at each other, I would imagine.
Prediction?
A home win.
Home win for Ayr. Let's move on to Glasgow Hawks against Hawick. Let's get the thoughts of head coaches Graham Hogg of Hawick and Phil Smith, in charge of the season at Glasgow Hawks.
So another tough weekend just passed with our fixture against Watsonians, where once again we probably contributed quite a good game and kept ourselves in the game, which is what we're probably always trying to do at the moment. But I think Watsonians' defence was excellent, so we didn't get as many opportunities to score close to the line as we were hoping, and we found it tough to beat them down. However, we had lots of positive moments, just not enough in areas where we could pick up some points. So this weekend we're rolling in against Hawick. As far as the team, we are fairly settled. I don't anticipate many changes. Maybe James Cooper will return into the fray at some point. Whether he's starting on the bench, I'm not sure. That's a likely thing that's going to happen. And as to Hawick, they're probably a little bit similar to ourselves, but a transition going on the whole, with groups of youngsters getting brought in to give them a crack, which I think is great for Scottish rugby at the moment. Certainly for the club game, I think it's a good thing. And hopefully give everybody another opportunity to show what they've been doing the last weeks against very tough opposition, and no disrespect to Hawick, probably not as strong as Ayr and Watsonians at the moment. So are we able to show what we've been doing the last few weeks? Saturday, and is it any good? And hopefully we'll find out, because we will be able to perform to the level we've been at the last few weeks. If the weather holds, it should be a cracking game.
Main objective of last week was obviously to get our first win of the season, and we managed to do that against a stuffy Selkirk side and gain a valuable 4 points. Safe to say though, we're massively disappointed with our performance. I think we played for maybe 10 minutes out of that full 80 minutes in terms of the performance we wanted to put together. So there's been a lot of conversation, there's been a lot of hard work this week, as there has been over the last few weeks, in terms of getting our performance to a level that us as coaches, and more importantly the boys, are happy with. So we look forward this week to a tough trip to Glasgow Hawks. Been really impressed with Glasgow Hawks, although results have maybe not went in their favour the last couple of weeks, but really impressed with their performances against some of the stronger teams in the league. And we know we'll have a real challenge at Belgrade this week. It's quite nice to come on here and not have to speak about any long-term injuries. We've not managed to do that over the last for however long. But we go in this week with a fully fit squad. Boys have, as I say, really trained well Tuesday and Thursday this week. And we had a little bit of professional experience in our squad this week with Sam Bird coming in, the young academy prospect coming in. And we've been really impressed with him in training. And we're looking forward to seeing how he goes in a makeshift back row of himself, Guillaume Maroldo and Connor Sutherland. So a three that I'm really looking forward to seeing how they go against a physical Hawks side.
Well, Glasgow Hawks, of course, have kicked off their campaign against Ayr, Currie and Watsonians, all the top three teams, so they can now play against teams outside the top four. They could easily win their next three, and all of a sudden you've got a very different league table.
Oh, definitely. I think it's been a positive start to the season for Glasgow Hawks. It seems strange to say they're 1 point out of a possible 15, but take the first week of the season out of it, where they got 50 odd points or whatever it was put on them at Ayr. They're clearly no pushovers this season. If the last 2 weeks are to go by, didn't get scalped off Currie, didn't get a scalping away at Watsonians, on a decent day for, the type of day that Watsonians would tend to like, particularly at home. So, yeah, I think it represents, the fact that Hawks look stuffy and they look hard to beat, and, that's a good platform from which to work. And, again, they'll be happy enough to be back at home this week. And you're right, see what kind of points they can accumulate now against the teams in the next 3 weeks that on paper they might be not expected to win, but, more chance of winning than the Ayers and the Curries.
Hawick's interesting, isn't it? Because their first match was at home to GHA and they were leading at half-time, basically in control. You'd kind of already put that down as a home win, and then all of a sudden the result came through. GHA won it. The next one at Kelso, they were 10-0 up at half-time and lost that in the second half. Against Selkirk, they were 18-3 up, very nearly lost it. It came to within a point.
Those are three games that, or they could be 3 from 3, if so there's something there. Obviously they're doing stuff right, and let's not forget the inexperience of some of their lads. And as I said last week, that's to their credit. That a lot of these, we speak about Watsonians having all these great young lads. Well, Hawick are chucking them in at the deep end as well. So for that to be they're to be commended. And Hawick, on the face of it, don't look to be that far away. They've got the first win, good win, gets the monkey off the back. They can kick on now, and they'll be looking to come away with points on Saturday as well. So I know what you're going to ask me, and I genuinely don't know for this one, Stuart. Home advantage, maybe to shade it.
Glasgow Hawks very difficult at home, no doubt about it.
It's easy to say. If this had been at Mansfield, I'd probably stick Hawick down. It's at Glasgow. I think Glasgow maybe shade it.
But certainly encouraging signs, as you say, for the Greens as we move forward. HERIOT'S v Watsonians, that's next. An Edinburgh derby to look forward to. Signs that HERIOT'S are about to make inroads into the Premiership as well, giving Currie a good game last week, particularly in the second half. Watsonians still unbeaten, but only beat Hawks by that 9 points at home last week. So we hear now from one of the Watsonians coaching team, Mike Kerr, and first HERIOT'S head honcho, Bob McKillop.
Last week against Currie was probably our best outing of the season so far. Definite signs of progress, especially in the second half. We need to start better. The second week in a row, we've been a try down within 2 minutes. 19-0 down at half time, and then 24-0 down just after half time. So, final score of 24-19, I would have taken that when we were 24-0 down. But having driven away, relatively happy with the second half performance. There's a slight frustration that we couldn't quite go over the line. Having been held up 5 metres out a couple of times in the last play of the game. Competition within the squad is great. Our second 15 have beaten Ayr and Currie in consecutive weeks, and our third 15 won their opening league fixture last week by 50 points. So club's in a good state. There's a lot of competition for places. I think most people think Watsonians are at a very similar stage of development to us, a team slightly in transition, having said goodbye to some Super Series stalwarts. That may be true, but they're sitting there with 3 wins out of 3 and we've got 3 losses out of 3. So I guess we'll find out where we both are a little bit more on Saturday. The bulk of the team will be along similar lines to last week. The back division will be pretty much what ended the game last week. Up front, Rory Kirkpatrick is fit to play again, and we'll welcome Sam Wallace back into the squad. Sam's been in America over the summer, but was back at training last night and looking as fit and raring to go as he always does. We've had a good week in training. We say this every week, but it's a young, new team. Connections are building quite nicely. I think people are starting to get an understanding of how each other behaves and plays. So, things are starting to look a little bit more natural and a little bit less clunky than they did. Again, as I said after the game last week, we spend a lot of time talking about the youngsters, but what allows those youngsters to play and develop is the leadership of Rory Leishman, Ewan McLaren, Jason Hill, Struan Sesford, and a couple of others. These guys are fantastic to have around. They've got wonderful rugby brains. They're still producing the goods themselves. So, look, we're really looking forward to the Watsonians game. Like I say, I think everyone at the start of the season thought we were at a similar stage of our development. So let's see how Saturday goes.
Last weekend's Hawks, obviously quite a tough battle. Both defences probably on top. They brought a lot of aggression, a lot of line speed, a lot of physicality around the contact area and really managed to shut us down, and we never really got going in attack. We struggled to maintain phases, struggled to look after the ball, and that was down to a lot of their good work without the ball. I was really impressed with the way they came to Marr side and tried to be really physical with us at the start of the game. But a few moments of sort of individual brilliance from some of our guys, notably Dom Kutsia, who managed to find a couple of good gaps. Lomond again running really well at 13 and running a lot of unselfish hard lines, and we managed to come out on top. It was good to get a win. This weekend, it's obviously big derby. I think HERIOT'S are very similar to us at the minute in terms of the way their squad looks. It's quite a young squad, quite an inexperienced squad with a few old heads in there. I really don't read anything into where they are in the league. They've got a lot of good players. It'll be a tough game, as it always is down there. We came out in a really good game in the semi-final last year. We came out on top, and they'll no doubt have a bit of a point to prove in that regard. We should be fairly settled in terms of what we're looking to do, and Andrew McInnes is unavailable this weekend, Stuart Allison's unavailable this weekend, but we've got Andrew Stephen back, which is good. We've got Kieran Watt back, which is good. Backs wise, Harry Clark at 12, who's been a real good player for us in terms of ball in hand and defensively for a young kid. He really has, especially ball in hand, he really has sort of lit our attack up. At 12, he's a really good, intelligent decision maker on the gain line with the ball. We've got Henry Whittleson in from the academy, which will be good to see how he goes. Merchiston pupil last year, who have seen a lot of really good skill set, really long kicking game, great hands. So he'll be a good addition to come in. Xander Wall's away this weekend, unfortunately, so Harry Fisher comes back into the squad. So a fairly settled back line to a degree, but there might just be a few moving parts based on how people get through the rest of this week. We need to remember how well we attacked against Selkirk. When you've got the threat of young Daniel Kelly on one wing who can sort of light a game up at any point with ball in hand. Hopefully he can keep his try-scoring exploits up this weekend, having scored 6 and 3, which for a 17-year-old is a pretty good return. And if we can get the ball into those channels, I think we'll get a bit of joy at Goldenacre on Saturday. But we do realise it's going to be a pretty tough game where we're going to have to earn that right to go, and we're going to have to be really clinical in our nature and really understand the systems we're trying to put into place to allow us those spaces to play on. So one we're looking forward to.
So just the 6 tries in 3 matches for Mr. Kelly.
Yeah, it's quite the feat, isn't it? He does look a good player, and there's good young players on both these teams this weekend. Rory Brogan for HERIOT'S, of course, he's starting to hit straps this season. There's the other young lad, I forget his name, that's 17, that's come in from Stewmel. He looks a really good prospect, and Watsonians have got a few of them. You know, the young centre that was alluded to there looks a really accomplished player. So yeah, I agree with both coaches. They do appear from the outside looking in to be at similar places in their development. For Heriot's, Wallace being back, it's hard to over-exaggerate how massive that is for them. You stick him in a back row with Leishman and maybe Kirkpatrick as well, and you know those are proper operators. Heriot's in a false position in the table at the moment. You look at their 5 games after this, they're all against teams that they would hope / expect to beat. So there's points there on offer. Just a question of what they can get this weekend at home to Watsonians. Sure to be a good game, this. Watsonians, Widdowson coming in. We've seen him at Melrose Sevens. I forget who he was playing for, but he did look a tidy player. And yeah, Watsonians is in a good place with all these young bucks at the moment, second in the table, 3 out of 3 wins. Watsonians just a shading away win, possibly by virtue of the fact that they sort of had Heriot's number last season.
I just got this feeling that Heriot's are going to spring into action this week, and I'm going for a home win. There we are.
Oh, well, make no bones about it. Somebody's going to take an absolute doing of Heriot's in the not too distant future. They might win this game. I don't see them giving Watsonians an absolute hiding, but yeah, it's a tough one to call.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting, and that's a game that we're sending Hugh Brown to down there at Golden Acre. Well, the final match in the Premiership is Selkirk versus GHA. Selkirk have 3 losses, GHA have 3 wins as the newly promoted team. Calum Forrester is the GHA boss, but first in charge of Selkirk is Sesh Henderson.
We've talked quite a lot about last week's game against Hawick, and we're a bit disappointed we didn't come away with 4 points or more. If you take into account the amount of times that we were in there, 22, applying a lot of pressure, didn't come away with enough points as we should have done. That was down to pretty good defence by Hawick, to be fair. And when they got their chances, they took them, and fair play to them. But when it got away, that's what we were thinking. And look, we just have to put that to bed, learn from it, move on to GHA this week, who obviously started the season very well, got 3 wins. They play attractive rugby, open style rugby. It'll be tough to turn over even if it's at Selkirk. So we need to be at our best. We know we need to take opportunities when they arise, when we're in the red zone, and come away with points, and more points of what we have done. And if we do that, then look, if we get the same sort of possession, we should be scoring more points then, and the win will come. It's we're getting players back. We've got Calum Anderson back this week. We've got Matt Rutherford and Ross Wolfenden from the Edinburgh Academy. Also at training this week is Ben Pickles has started back up again, so he's only a couple of weeks away. Possibly the Melrose game at the beginning of October, he should be available for selection again. So we're slowly getting players back, but right now we've just got to, our squad should be good enough to try and start getting wins, and that's what we're training really hard for during the week. And hopefully this Saturday that we can play for the 80 and get over the line. But it's going to be a tough shift. We're not addressing that any other way. But look, we're desperate to go out there and put a performance in at home and get the full points.
We're absolutely delighted with our 3 wins so far this season. It's a huge achievement for this group and this team to have come up to the Premiership and started the way we have. Last weekend was a different challenge. We played against the most physical team we've probably played against so far this season, in a really experienced Kelso pack. So it's hugely pleasing how we matched that and dominated certain areas of the field and different aspects of the game. So a real pleasing part for us last week was our line out was functioning again. And we could play some real good attacking stuff off of our line out and driving mauls. So this weekend it's another huge challenge for this group as we go down to Selkirk. Selkirk have had a challenging start to the season, playing Watsonians and Currie, and then narrowly losing to Wight last week. So we're sure that they'll be looking to rectify that, and we'll need to take our game to another level when we go down to Selkirk again this weekend. So looking forward to the challenge ahead, and our day out at Phelps Hall on Saturday.
So GHA are on for the Borders Grand Slam.
They are indeed. And you've got long odds of it. Long odds on it at the start of the season. Stuart, all credit to GHA. That's what the league needed. I know we're only 3 games, but we need somebody not to get cut adrift at the bottom from the point of view of not having too many dead rubbers as the season wears on, and for the promoted team to come up and be 3 from 3. I mean, as far as they're concerned, it's the kind of stuff that dreams are made of. So all credit to them, and they'll be bounding down the road tomorrow. So Selkirk, this is a big game, Stuart. Early in the season, like we keep saying, but this is a big game. The following week they've got Kelso, then it's Melrose after that, then Hawks after that. got to be getting some points there, because then it's Heriot's away and then Ayr come to town. So it sounds a bit silly to say crunch games this early in the season, but you don't want to be 0 from 4, having played the likes of GHA at home and having played, Watsonians at home. They've had tough games as well, but you need to knock that 0 off at some point, and they'll very much be looking to do that tomorrow. But the good news for them, Anderson back, that is massive. 2 young pros coming in, that'll help. Pickles not available yet, but for him just to be on the radar, that again's a big fillip. So big game tomorrow.
And we were talking earlier about psychology, weren't we? And I mean, as you mentioned there, if a team goes 0 from 4, that's going to affect them mentally.
It can. Not, like I say, they've got fixtures, winnable fixtures, but then all of a sudden, if we don't win all those, we're 1 from 7, or we're 0 from 7, or even 2 from 7, or then we're away at Heriot's, then the rot's starting to set in, and you're really looking at the games to say, well, what ones are going to win to stay up here? That's how quickly in a 2-3 week period from now you could kind of slip into that. So, but just as equally, Selkirk could win tomorrow, could win the coming 3 games, and then all of a sudden comfortable at the very least in mid-table and starting to look up rather than down.
Okay, well, after the break we'll take a look at National Leagues 1 and 2.
This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast.
The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast.
Brought to you by Rugby Radio.
Borders water, Borders barley and Borders people. That's what makes the Borders Distillery. Working exclusively with local farmers, the Borders Distillery is bringing whiskey making back to the region. Our award-winning distillery is open to everyone, where you can meet the people behind the scenes, explore our wash house and shop quality local products. Tour your local distillery and discover the spirit of the Borders. Full details at thebordersdistillery.com. Always enjoy our spirit responsibly. Under 18s must be accompanied by an adult when visiting the Borders Distillery.
If you're hearing this, then so could your customers. To advertise on Rugby Radio's 2 Saturday shows and also the Scottish Club Rugby podcast, get in touch via our website at rugbyradio.co.uk. Advertising and sponsorship packages are available for the whole season or on a monthly basis. Help support what we do to promote club rugby in Scotland using our contact page at rugbyradio.co.uk.
Based in Galashiels but covering the whole region and beyond, Borders Mortgage Hub is your one-stop shop for all things mortgage related in the Borders. Visit us at bordersmortgagehub.com or call us on 01896 807 008. That's 01896 807 008. Borders Mortgage Hub. Mortgages for the Borders in the Borders.
Borders Mortgage Hub.
With over 30 years' experience in print and embroidery, BE Uniforms are one of Scotland's leading rugby teamwear specialists. We currently supply many great clubs across Scotland and the north of England, offering brands such as Adidas, Macron, Canterbury and BE Sport. We have a specialist teamwear team who collectively have over 60 years' experience in the trade, delivering quality teamwear and finding solutions to the challenges out there. If your club is looking for a new supplier and would like to know more, get all the details at beuniforms.co.uk, proud sponsors of Rugby Radio and Borders Rugby TV. BE Uniforms, your identity is our purpose.
This is the Scottish Club Rugby Podcast.
The Scottish Club Rugby Podcast.
Brought to you by Rugby Radio.
Let's move into the National Leagues then, and National 1 starting with Gordonians versus Edinburgh Accies. Gordonians with 2 heavy losses and Accies with 2 big wins. Graham Bonner is the interim head coach and director of rugby at Edinburgh Accies. His thoughts straight after Gordonians head coach Rory Riddle.
Last week was a big step in the right direction for us. We were extremely disappointed in our performance in our season opener against Glasgow Accies, and all the chat last week was about significantly improving our offensive accuracy, because we knew we were going to have to score points down at Marr to give us a chance, and to go down there and score 40 points showed a vast improvement on the week prior, and to be honest, I think scoring 40 down there will be a feat that good teams will struggle to replicate this year. This week we're boosted by academy talent Rory coming straight in to start at 12. He's a physical young lad with really good distribution skills as well. But apart from that, we're looking like a settled team now, and we escaped Marr with no real knocks. This week is all about our defensive show, and we've leaked 67 and 70 points in back-to-back games, and it's really simple. We've got to be harder to beat, especially at home. Countess Wells has to be a tough place to visit for any team making the trip up north. It's quite clear now after last week that we've got the talent to score points, but we've just got to stay in the fight for longer. Edinburgh Accies obviously had a cracking result against Glasgow last weekend, so we're fully aware of the challenge ahead. But like I said before, these are the teams that you want to be competing against week in, week out. So we're really looking forward to it and hopefully take another step in the right direction again this week.
After a great win last weekend at Glasgow Accies, we are forced into 3 changes this week when we travel away to Gordonians. We've got Jamie Soule and Richie Thompson unavailable. We have Rob Gordon and Will Cathro coming into the pack. And we have Robbie Kent unavailable also, so we've got Sam Hine coming into the backs. I guess despite all of this, we've prepared really well this week. Very much looking forward to the challenge that Gordonians, I'm sure, will give us. But hopefully we can go up to Aberdeen and get another win and stay top of the league.
Well, on paper, this has away win written all over it in big, bold letters. But let's not forget the Gordonians put 40 points on Marr last week at Fullerton Park. And Robin, do you know the last time that Marr conceded more than 40 points at home?
I don't, Stuart, but I was literally going to say, fair play to Gordonians for that aspect of the game, because I can't recall the last time many teams or any teams would have went to Fullerton and put 40 points to them. Nah, you've got me with that one, Stuart.
Yes, well, it was actually 2018, a long, long time ago, when Melrose won 43-0 at Fullerton Park in the Premiership. So that's an interesting stat. I know Ayr obviously matched Gordonians with a 40-point win over at Fullerton Park. But as Rory said just now, there's not many teams are going to go to Fullerton Park, knowing Fullerton Park as we do, and come away with 40 points.
No, so it says a bit about their attacking prowess, but it's the other aspect of the game that needs to be tightened up and sharpish. They know that and they'll be working on it. But defence, they've leaked a few tries, absolutely. But yeah, he's right. As I said last week, if they get a point down, they come away with anything at Fullerton, then that represents a good afternoon's work to an extent. Factor in a long journey as well. So yeah, they'll be looking forward to one of the great old names of Scottish rugby coming to town tomorrow. I see Accies winning. Accies are not going to be strengthened by the loss of the likes of Kent, Soule, albeit he's not been long back, but and particularly Thompson. I really rate Thompson actually. So, but yeah, the likes of Cole Imrie still in there playing well. I think Accies will have enough.
Next up in National 1, it's Jed-Forest versus Boroughmuir at Riverside Park. Jed without a win yet in their 2 games. Boroughmuir almost beat Stirling County, then built up a big lead against Musselburgh before letting them back into the game last week. But they did get over the line, and here's their Director of Rugby, Neill Wood, after we hear from Jed head coach Michael Harshaw.
They've obviously been going very well. Good start to the season for them with a losing bonus point against Stirling, and then 5 points against Musselburgh. Very high scoring but tight game. So we're under no illusions how difficult it's going to be. We need to raise our standards for this week to compete. From our point of view, last week we had a couple of late enforced changes in the back line when we went to Biggar. We'd Finn Purvis made his debut at scrum half and Lewis Elder back into action for Jed-Forest. Really good to increase our squad depth of those 2 boys. Return of Lewis Young and Mark Glenn to the back line, who pulled out last week, so that should give us a bit more impetus and a bit more experience. And Clark Skeldon isn't far off a return and may be back to full fitness for this week, which would give us a massive boost in the forwards going into this game.
Yeah, good win last week against Musselburgh at home. Pretty much a game of 2 halves with a high scoring game of 46-42, well in front at half time, and kind of let them back into the game through some of their own mistakes in the second half. But the guys got the result. It was a costly result for us in that we lost Jordan Edmonds to quite a serious knee injury. He's had an operation on that now, and he'll be out for the rest of the season. Pretty nasty, dangerous tackle that resulted in Junior coming off the park. Also sustained a broken hand to Calum McFeet-Smith, which has forced him to sit out for a few weeks. But that gives the opportunity to some of our younger players to make a mark. And this week we'll see Ed Macquarie and Logan Small come into the front row to get their chance, and Toby Frankham and Jack Robertson coming onto the bench. We'll also see the return of exciting young prospect Will Lockhart coming into the pack, and on Aubrey Coob comes back from a couple of weeks off. So a couple of forced changes, but all in all the pack looks fairly strong. The backs, again, another couple of changes in the backs, but the return of Gav Lockhart hopefully strengthen our midfield.
So yeah, really looking forward to the challenge down at Riverside. Never easy going down there. Over the years that I can remember, so many hard-fought battles down there at Jed. You know, it's going to be a tough trip for us. We don't take them lightly. They've had a couple of results that probably haven't went their way in the start of the season, but you know, they're a strong side and they're a good rugby playing side. Hopefully it'll be an open game and we can see some exciting rugby.
Director of Rugby at Boroughmuir there, Neill Wood. And of course the big news coming out of Meggetland is that Jordan Edmonds is out for the rest of the season. In fact, Jordan did send us a text and said, yeah, frustrating one, read the circumstances as it was definitely preventable, but it is what it is. We'll smash the rehab and come back stronger. That's the man.
Yeah, that's desperately disappointing to hear, first and foremost from the player's point of view, and we wish him a speedy and full recovery. But from a Boroughmuir perspective, I actually had his name written down on my on my sheet here to mention about, with him in the team. They're always got to do damage, so I've now had to cross his name out there, and that gives Jed a lift. He would absolutely do damage and he'd create space for others, so tough one now to call. Boroughmuir have made a really, really good start. 6 points given who they've played and where they've played it. I think they'll be pretty pleased with that. Jed could do with getting a win on the board somewhere along the line. Looked for a while like they were in the fight at Biggar last week. Again, just like some of the other teams around the Borders region, they could just do with a win to get the monkey off the back and ease the nerves a wee bit.
Match number 3 is Marr versus Biggar. Marr unbeaten in 2 and put 70 points on Gordonians last weekend, but they do leak tries, as we've just heard. We can get the comments of Biggar's Craig Borthwick and first Marr head coach Kenny Diffenthal.
Reasonably happy the way the season's tracking. After 2 games, 2 wins. We've obviously shipped a lot of points in the first 2 games, so it's been a big focus for us this week, as we will need it against Biggar, who will be confident after their win against Jed. So we'll need to up our game defensively if we're wanting to get a result. Looking forward to welcoming Biggar to Fullerton.
Marr scored a lot of points last week against Gordonians. They look to get themselves on a bit of roll. They've had a good start to the season. Off the back of that, I think we had a game of 2 halves last weekend against Jed. I think we first half, to say I was furious at half time was a wee bit of an understatement. I wasn't happy in our effort levels and stuff like that. That these sort of games and amateur rugby is built round about sort of effort and doing a bit of double work and stuff like that. So I had a few choice words at half time to the boys on Saturday, and I think second half we came out, we woke up, we got into the way that we wanted to play, and we played some really good rugby in that second half of the thing. And it's just for us is finding that for longer periods of time. It's a feeling that if we can get it right for 60, 70, 80 minutes, then these games are won probably earlier than what we have been doing in previous times. So for about us, it's just about getting that second half performance right from the off and really having a go at Marr. I think there's, they scored 70 last week. They let in a few, so Gordonians obviously scored some points against them. So again, I'm sure they'll be doing a fair bit of work on defensive stuff this weekend. So there'll be a real aspect from them. But again, it's just purely all about what we can control, and if we get our stuff right, I feel that we're a good enough side to challenge anybody and get a real good performance and see what the outcome is after that. Be a couple of changes. Rhys Cullen comes back in after his sabbatical, let's just call it, after People's Sevens. So he'll give us a real good attacking option there. So he comes back in. Lewis Stewart, he's not available, but certainly there's boys there available to step back in and do it. So we'll be much the same. I think Rhys will be one of the only changes. Going up to Marr, we're looking to carry on from second half last week and have a real good go and see where we can come out of it.
Well, as we know, Big Both doesn't like to lose, but even with his team winning, he gets very, very angry, and you wouldn't like him when he's angry, Robin.
No, you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him, would you? But no, he's doing a pretty good job there, the big fella, and I Biggar will go down there on the back of a good win against Jed. And again, in the knowledge that Marr shipped a few, but the problem is, you have to stop Marr scoring the tries down there. So it's got the makings of a good game. This one, Stuart. Marr, as I mentioned before, more chat about Stirling, more chat about Edinburgh Accies, and I think that'll suit Marr down to the ground. And if if Marr can get this one over the line, then they need to pick up a bonus point. They're 15 from 15, so absolutely still in the no mugs category, and not many teams will go to Fullerton and win this season. So yeah, probably Marr. Just to shade this one, Lewis Stewart being out for Biggar is a bit of a blow, but obviously Cullen coming back in, that helps.
Let's move on to Musselburgh versus Gala. That's happening tomorrow at Stony Hill. Gala destroyed 92-7 at home last weekend. We'll hear from Maroons head coach Ewan Robbie in a minute, but first, Musselburgh boss Andrew Clark.
Last weekend was a bit of a strange one for us. We were 33 points to 7 down at one stage. In the second half we started playing a bit better and we almost had the chance of winning it at the end. So quite proud of the way the boys reacted in that situation. Gala had a tough weekend. We're no stranger to that. We've had some big results against us, especially Ayr last season, and we know that the guys will come out fighting on Saturday to prove a point how good a rugby team they are. So we won't be taking them lightly this weekend.
Yeah, no getting away from a very disappointing result on Saturday at Netherdale. Stirling got off to a really good start, 3 tries down within not very long. A lot of that was due to our tackle height though, to be fair. Disappointing the fact that we had prepared to be getting the low tackles in against a really big powerful side, and the way they did play well. After the results like that, it's really important to be realistic about things. 3 guys in the squad that had played some of the Friday night. At this point last season, I think we're 15 players down from the same game last season. We do have a fair injury list at the moment. And yeah, it's just about keeping on the tracks, getting back on the tracks, and just keep trying to build the blocks and what we're trying to do. There are a lot of young players there, and there was a lot of young players stepped in against Stirling at the weekend there, and it's a learning process for them. We've had a good week at training, some honest conversations, and we are looking forward to getting on the pitch against Musselburgh. Musselburgh, they're bound down from the Premiership. They're a proud side, hard side to beat up at their home ground there. We just have to look at ourselves and get our attack going again. I think we're slowly getting there, even though we didn't score many at the weekend. But the kind of shape we're working on, the system we're working on, it's building those blocks each week upon week. And yeah, just all guns blazing, getting up to and getting back on the pitch and trying to right some wrongs. We'll hopefully have 1 or 2 players back. Dan Kerr should definitely be back with us for the game at the weekend at Musselburgh, but it's just a case of keeping going with the fight and see what we can get out of things. But we'll be giving it our all, same as usual, and looking forward to another game.
Ewan Robbie, Gala head coach, and before that Andrew Clark from Musselburgh. And as Andrew said, they've been there in that position this time last year, shipping 80 odd points to Ayr. So it does happen now and again, and it can't have been easy for the boys this week, obviously, to regroup after that. And of course, got to mention the Gavin Fisher injury, which held up play for a long time while the ambulance went onto the pitch. And of course, we wish the lad well in his recovery. How do you bounce back from that, Robin? And particularly when your next game is against Musselburgh, who are going pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, they're going up against a team that was relegated from the Prem last season, who appear to have the likes of Badenhurst back. So it's not going to get any easier, Stuart. You have to be honest. I don't know. It probably takes a wee bit of recovering from, but Ewan's right there. All you can do is lace them up and go get absolutely torn in as best you can and leave nothing out there, for want of less of a cliche. Musselburgh were staring down the barrel at half time last week as well, but that's shown good character to come back from 33-7 at half time and come away with something and almost, as was mentioned there, win the game. But yeah, I agree, all the best to young Fisher as well, but a lot of young lads in that Gala setup at the moment. And let's not get away from the fact that it was arguably the league's best team, and they're still not going to dish out a few hidings this season, that's for sure. But I think you just have to take it on the chin, Stuart, and move on as best you can and just park it, just get rid of it.
Well, the other game in National 1 is Stirling County against Glasgow Accies. Glasgow Accies losing 34-0 at home to Edinburgh Accies last week. Another result you would never have expected after them scoring 67 at Gordonians the week before. We'll get the preview of this match from Accies head coach Ryan Grant in a second, but first head coach at Stirling, that's Craig Jackson.
Yeah, after a successful weekend down at Netherdale, where I thought our boys were outstanding. Not an easy place to go. They've got a great home record. Our boys stepped up. We were disappointed on week 1 how we performed. We let ourselves down a little bit. However, the way they conducted themselves, the full squad, was outstanding last weekend. And the most pleasing part of that, we had 3 under-19s, under-20s forwards on debut, and they all played outstandingly well. So we're building strength and depth around it as well, which is the most important part. And we're very fortunate to have such a strong squad that we're able to do that with. So look, selection headaches this week, which is a great place to be. We can now trust them in the process. They're now pushing on the senior boys into squad selection. So now some real headaches this weekend. Fortunately, Glenn Bryce will be back from injury again to give us a kind of squad selection around that. Ruhart's back from holiday, and VP is back up for selection this weekend. So 3 real experienced guys pushing back into the squad, who hopefully will take off where the youngsters left, having left it in a better place after round 1. So in a fortunate position. Look, we're under no illusions that Glasgow Accies will be a different beast. They'll be hurting after last weekend. They've been a top 2, top 3 side in the National 1 for the last 2 or 3 years. So under no illusions that they'll be coming to Bridge Hall with a point to prove. So luckily we're back at home comforts. Hopefully we can just rip in and control the controllables, look after us and put in another good performance.
A big weekend for us after a really disappointing weekend last week. You know, we've had a look at the video and we've reviewed where we went wrong, and ultimately it came down to individual errors and pressure that we put on ourselves. So this week, you know, a huge task to go and play Stirling, and we're going to have to make sure that we've fixed all of those things pretty sharp if we're going to have a chance up at Bridge Hall against a very good Stirling side with a number of ex-internationals and pros up there. So a tough week for us to bounce back, but you know, the boys had a good session on Tuesday, and we're looking forward to getting back out on the pitch, trying to rectify poor performance last week with a much improved one this week.
Ryan Grant there from Glasgow Accies, before that Craig Jackson of Stirling County. And the scary thing about what he had to say there was that, if anything, Stirling's going to be even stronger this week.
That's right, Stuart. That actually came as news to me. I'd just assumed, I think because of the scoring last, I just assumed that WP Neill and Glenn Bryce, etc. would have been there and, you know, having a field day. I know Sean Kennedy was playing, you know, that what an environment for these young lads to come into with Neill and Kennedy and Bryce, you know, ex-pros, ex-internationals. So yeah, Stirling, good place at the moment. You know, they've made the start that, you know, many would have predicted. They'll be favourites again this weekend. But Glasgow Accies, it's the old free hit scenario. You know, not ideal preparation. You know, Ryan will have been disappointed there to be nilled at home by Edinburgh Accies. But Glasgow Accies gave Stirling some problems last season. They'll be looking to get up there and do it again.
So that's National 1 done and dusted. Let's have a look at National 2 now, as we start with Dundee against Berwick. Berwick in trouble at the bottom of the table. Paul Pringle is their head coach. His opposite number for Dundee is the vastly experienced and massively respected Colin Sangster.
Last week was a bit of a lacklustre performance on the road early on, so we're keen to make amends for that and try to get back to winning ways at home. We're keen to turn Mayfield into a bit of a fortress where teams don't look forward to coming there because they know they're going to have a really tough game. I think the lads will be well up for this Saturday. Team selection-wise, we're waiting on a couple of injured players, but we should be fairly strong. We've still got a couple of guys out injured who definitely won't make it this weekend, but we're hoping to have a couple back as well. So looking forward to that.
So coming off the back of what was a really disappointing performance last week away to Kirkcaldy, we're travelling to Dundee in what we know will be a very tough tie. We do have the luxury of a few guys back. So club captain Ryan Wilson will be back at 8, and his brother Darren Goodfellow will also be playing. So the 2 big additions, with both being big ball carrying forwards for us, and that will make a massive difference. Unfortunately, Jordan Patterson's unavailable this weekend, as is Stu Farnaby, who suffered a cut eye in the game last week. So yeah, a couple in and a couple back out. James Aird makes the bench again after a really good performance off the bench last week. In the back, so we welcome back Aidan Rosie, which is a big boost, but unfortunately Ollie Bias, who's, you know, he's been a bit of a revelation since he came into the team out of the cold. So he's been, you know, a real big ball carrier for us, just a real threat. So he's unfortunately unavailable just for this weekend, but yeah, Aidan's a great player to have coming back in, so that's good. Tom Vinart moves to fullback. So Tom had a great, you know, one of the stronger performers last week, so he's, you know, in a bit more of a prominent role this week. And Rory Muscrop will come onto the wing. Rory came off the bench last week. He is ordinarily a 9, but he's just a good feisty young character, so he's and he makes his tackles, which is really important at this level, so he'll come in there. So all in all, it's a bit of a mixed bag, you know, a few in and a few away. We're still kind of hoping to get to that point where we can have, you know, predominantly the majority of our guys available, but yeah, we're not quite there yet. It'll be a difficult tie away to Dundee, we certainly know that, but I'm really looking for the lads to put into practice what we've worked on in training this week, so we'll see what comes.
So familiar names back for Berwick, including Aidan Rosie and Captain Ryan Wilson. That's definitely going to be helping them. But Dundee up for this one?
Oh yeah, Dundee, but as he said there, Colin trying to make it a fortress like it's been before. Rosie, I agree, him in particular coming back, that's a big boost. He's a player that could, you know, he could do a number at a higher level, absolutely. But yeah, Berwick just struggling a wee bit at the moment. The Thompson brothers, speaking of playing a higher level, they're back at Kelso now. That's obviously not going to help Berwick's cause, so tough to see anything but a home win here, Stuart.
Highland versus Kirkcaldy is next. Highland top of the table with 2 try bonuses. Kirkcaldy in 4th, coming off the back of a good home win against Berwick. Quinton Sanft is the Kirkcaldy head coach of many years, while over at Highland, David Carson is in charge.
Yeah, delighted to get a win on the road against a very good Falkirk side. In the first half, yeah, they sliced us apart. Their backs played really, really well and got 3 very good tries. But we stayed in the fight, and that's what we talked about all week, the mindset of being away from home and not having the support to cheer us on, but encouraging ourselves. And we managed to get a couple of tries from young Fergus Riek to go in at half-time, 27-14 down. Second half, really pleased. We controlled the game. We kept pinning them back in their 22, managed to get a couple of tries through Seamus Ross, and his brother Connor got one as well, and Scotty getting a couple of the conversions. Last couple of minutes got a bit squeaky. They got a penalty in front of the post, and lucky for us, he pulled it left and we saw the game out. So 5 points on the road, we're delighted with. We had a really good bus trip home up the A9, and I was really delighted for the young boys who were with us last year, because some of them had never won on the road before, so it was a good away win for them. This week, we're back home against Kirkcaldy themselves. They had a big win at home. So for us, we just need to carry on the way we're attacking. We're working really hard. We're getting really quick ruck ball. The backs are thriving in that. They're finding gaps. They're finding spaces, supporting themselves really well. We continue with that. The defence is still a work on for us. We're learning all the time, and we had a good session Tuesday with it and a good session Thursday. This week, we'll welcome Rudy Knott back, and Roddy Thompson will be back into the squad as well. So that's a few kilograms back into the pack, which will be great, and they're both really good in the open. Looking forward to Saturday. Looking forward to being back in front of the balcony, tuning us on. Hopefully we'll get 5 points.
Great to get our first win. Some excellent tries, but we still need to try and tighten up our defensive efforts. We have Highland coming up this weekend, which will be a tough contest. Looks like they're raking up some high score game. Looks like it'll be a fast-paced contest anyway. We'll have 5 returning players from injury and holidays, which will be great to boost up the momentum we're carrying on from last week. And more notably, Rhys Bonnet will come into the squad to make his debut for the season.
That's Quinton Sanft. Before that, David Carson. As David mentioned and sort of hinted at, there's never been many parties on the bus on the way back for Highland in recent times, and they'll certainly have enjoyed that one, and showing character coming from 21-0 behind to win that.
Yeah, and furthermore, I don't think many will win at Falkirk this season. That's a brilliant win, made, as you say, even better by the fact that they've really had to dig it out. And what a difference that could make, an early season away win when there's not been, as you say, many of those of late. No many teams are going to win at Canal Park, so if they can pick up a few away wins, I fancy them to be there or thereabouts, absolutely, but if they can, win 2 or 3 away games early in the season on top of the home wins, then, they could get really on the charge. And yeah, I fancy them tomorrow as well. Rory not playing in the third tier, we know all about him. He's going to take a few names at that level, so yeah, Highland to take that one tomorrow.
We've both been to Highland. We know what Canal Park is like, and it's a formidable place to go for any team, travelling up there for a start. Fantastic hospitality as always.
Brilliant.
Their crowd, just like Fullerton Park, I suppose, at Marr as well. I mean, such a partisan crowd, noisy crowd. But if you can get in their faces and silence them, then that's your best way forward.
You're right. What a place to go. I'd recommend, if your team is playing at Highland anytime soon, then get up and watch that, 'cause it's a great place to go.
Well, Newton Stewart take on Howe of Fife tomorrow at Bladnoch Park. Two evenly matched teams, but home advantage for Newton Stewart. Howe of Fife head coach is Neill Lear, and we'll hear from him right after we get the latest from Newton Stewart's man in charge, and that's Nick Lloyd.
On Saturday, we travelled to Glasgow to play GHK. We had a number of changes due to unavailability and some squad rotation. And it was pretty obvious once the teams were released that GHK had strengthened their squad, we thought, significantly with the return of some really strong, experienced players. As both myself and Cammy said in the previews last week, we expected a really tight, tough battle, and that's exactly what we got. As the score suggests, defence was to the fore. There was some incredible ball retention, which was met with ferocious defence. To highlight this, the first score of the match saw our captain Tam McDonald go over in the 30th phase from a move about 40 metres out. We led 8-3 at the break, and the only disappointing thing for us was the first 20 minutes of the second half. They lifted their intensity, we dropped off, we let our discipline slip, and aided by a hefty penalty count in their favour, a wealth of possession, they scored 15 unanswered points from 2 tries and a penalty, which gave them an 18-8 lead. What was really pleasing was the way we hit back in the last 20. We'll definitely rue a couple of gilt-edged opportunities where we lost the ball close to the GHK line. And eventually, with a few minutes remaining, we converted the pressure and Jack Gore touched down wide out, but time had run out and we lost 18-13. The bonus point was some consolation, but definitely no shame to lose at all to GHK, who are a really serious team. I'd say they're much more intelligent and experienced than last year. Damn it. This week we take on Howe of Fife back at Bladnoch Park. Whilst they're the new boys on the block, we know very little of them. They've scored around 40 points against 2 former Nat 1 teams in their 2 games thus far, so obviously they belong in the league. For us, selection-wise, we've got a couple of players in doubt. We don't anticipate there's going to be many, if any, easy games in this league, so we expect another really tough battle against Howe on Saturday.
Looking back to Peebles last weekend, I think it was a brilliant game for the neutral. Pretty high scoring, pretty entertaining end to end. First 30 minutes, I think Peebles were getting the travel out of their legs, made a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes, and we capitalised on that early. Credit to them, second half, they dragged themselves back into the game, right at the death, almost took the win. Massive credit to our boys for holding strong, and I think great 5-point win in our first home game of the season. Looking ahead to this weekend, Newton Stewart away, our second big away trip in 3 weeks. It's going to be another tough one. Notoriously tough team to play against down there. So for us, we will have to tighten up on a good few areas if we are to come away with points. But that's something really exciting that we can work on. I think a lot of the mistakes from the Peebles game are sort of easy fixes from our side. So looking to put 1 foot forward for this weekend. In terms of team selection, looking like a very, very similar squad. Finlay Folks will miss out due to a bang on the head last weekend. As of now, we are just finalising who will slot in where. But great weekend of rugby ahead. I'm very excited from a Howe of Fife point of view.
Well, an interesting matchup.
Well, again, another team making a long trip this weekend. That's a fair track. Howe in Cooper, they're all the way down to Newton Stewart. But yeah, for fancy Newton Stewart, a good bonus point away at GHK last week. Brilliant win for Howe, mind you, against Peebles. But I think if they can come away with anything down there, I think with Newton Stewart, I think you're going to see some different personnel between home games and away games, given farming and that kind of stuff, and the trips they need to make. So it'll be tough for Howe. Newton Stewart will be, I would imagine, somewhat close to home strength, and they're strong at home, and I think if Howe can come away with anything, that's a pretty good result.
Let's move on then to Peebles versus Falkirk, and my words, this is a match that could explode. Let's have a listen to what both teams have to say this week. Falkirk's head coach Graham Simpson, and first Peebles man in charge Graham Patterson.
Yeah, again another frustrating Saturday afternoon for us up at Duffus Park in Cooper against Howe of Fife. opened the game really well, playing some really impressive rugby to get ourselves 3 really good chances in those first 15 minutes, which we showed the guys on the videos, but really only came away with 1 3-point penalty, which is just not good enough in terms of a return. And that's what we've said to the guys. We need to be converting a lot more of these chances, especially early doors, to stamp your authority on these games. 25 minutes to go, we're 40 points to 18 down and staring down the barrel of a hiding. But we saw an absolute spark ignite in the players. They suddenly turned it on, and 3 tries in that last sort of period of the game pushed them to the limit. They were clinging on for dear life at the end, and the whistle couldn't come quick enough for them, and we just needed that one more passage of play probably, and I think we would have nicked that. Whether we deserved it or not, I don't know, but we scored 6 tries away from home and come away with only 2 points and losing bonus and a try bonus, which is the frustrating thing. Listen, we'll turn it around. We focused on training very much on the contact area, and we see that as key in terms of getting our attack delivering. Team news, bringing John Gray back up into the front row, which allows Ewan Murray back into the pack, starting in the second row alongside Kenny Roger, and in the back row of Rob Harrison and Sam Ferry, who's impressing as a young 18-year-old back row, week on week, getting better, and Roddy Guinea. Max McKeever's back as well, usual centre pairing of Stevie Hamilton and James Dow, and Rio Bhatia comes in to start as Davy Collins is away on holiday. Listen, we know it's going to be difficult. Falkirk obviously pushed Highland to the limit last week, so they're obviously going pretty well. So we know that we have to be the best possible sum of our parts to go out and win that.
Really, really close game against Highland. Positive game for us. To go punch for punch with them was really positive. Really kind of took a lot of buoyancy from the performance moving forward to next week. So could even go as far as saying it was a game we potentially should have won with chances to do so. Equally frustrating, but also really positive for us at Falkirk. So really happy with that performance last week. Looking forward to go down to Peebles, another challenge against a squad coming down from National 1, but a challenge we're certainly excited to take on. We've been able to acquire Archie Russell, who's made his way back over from France, looking to come to Falkirk and play a season with his brother Harry. It's an absolute great acquisition for us at Falkirk, and he's fitted into the training environment really, really well, bringing obviously a wealth of experience, a talented player, all-round good human. So he's really fitting in and bolstering and adding to what we've already got. So, we couldn't be happier with that. So he'll be coming off from the bench on Saturday, and we'll be hoping for him to obviously make an immediate and fairly hefty impact. No real changes to the 15 that went out and played against Highland. The boys have been playing amazingly well the last 2 weeks, so we don't really see the need to change anything. A couple of changes in terms of positional stuff, but nothing noteworthy. So yeah, we're really looking forward to the challenge ahead down at Peebles.
2 wounded animals there going head to head. It's going to be some match-up that, and the Russells are back.
The Russells are back, yeah. 2 brothers of Finn, who are very good players in their own right. Archie, ex-super rugby player here in this country, been playing in France as well. Harry, scrum half, seen him play inter-district championship, more than holding his own at that sort of level. So a bit of quality there in the 3rd tier. Peebles, yeah, wounded animal. They'll really be looking to put in a performance at home, get off the mark. But yeah, I think from looking dead and buried, as Graham said there last weekend, to come away with 2 points again, another team that's shown a bit of character, a bit of steel there last weekend. But again, I think Falkirk will be there or thereabouts this season, and if Peebles are going to be there or thereabouts, then they need something and they need it quick. So tough one to call.
Well, finally in National 2 we've got Stuart's Melville versus GHK. GHK's head coach Cammy Little will give us his viewpoint ahead of tomorrow, but before we hear from him, we'll see what Stu Mel's Andrew Kelly has to say about this one.
The players and coaches are looking forward to their game against GHK this Saturday down at Inverleith. We had a very good win against Dundee last weekend, but we felt like there were a lot of points left out there down to poor execution. So that's something that we focused on this week. GHK are 2 from 2 and are definitely one of the top teams in the league this season. So we know we've got a big test in our hands They're both mobile and they can attack with pace out wide, so we will have to look at that when it comes to our defence. But we feel confident with our win last weekend against Dundee. We put phases of play together and showed real dominance with our kicking display, and that's something we'll look to be doing this Saturday as well.
GHK are travelling through to Stuart's Melville this weekend. We've played each other often over the last few years. I think both teams are pretty familiar with one another. We'll need to deal with a big pack, lively backs as well. They've always been good contests, so look forward to another one. We had a good win against a really tough Newton Stewart side last weekend at Annie's Land. We felt that we'd done enough to earn the win, but it was a game that could have gone either way. So it takes us into this game in decent spirits. We probably tried to force things. We were a little bit impatient last week, trying to run the ball wide without going forward and giving us the space to do so. We're missing Mark Preston in our pack, but we've got Lewis Rowan back after he missed last week. And we're looking forward to the return of Ben Hutton to GHK after he spent the last couple of years in Aberdeen studying and playing for Gordonians.
That sounds like a pretty interesting matchup, Stu Mel against GHK.
Yeah, it's another, as we're going to say so often in this division, GHK, they look decent this season. If they can win at Peebles, then they can win at Stewmel. But yes, Stewmel will be looking to pick up as many home wins as possible this season to stamp their own mark on the league and for them to be as close to the top as possible. They went pretty well last season, so a slight away win.
So a full programme of club rugby tomorrow. Our feature game on Rugby Radio, as we mentioned, Kelso versus Melrose from Poynter Park, with Robin and Ian Hurd in the commentary box. Hugh Brown will be at HERIOT'S against Watsonians for us, and we'll have live updates from all 15 matches throughout the show. So take us with you when you go to a match, for the only place to get live coverage of Scottish club rugby, and you don't even have to go behind a paywall. It's all free, and the good news is that we will always be free to air on Borders Rugby Television and Rugby Radio to ensure maximum exposure for the club game in Scotland. Well, we're on air at 2:30 all the way through till 5 o'clock, and then at 7 our new Rugby Roundup programme, where we bring you all the results and the news from the 15 games in the top 3 divisions, hearing from players and coaches. So make a note of that. Rugby Roundup on air at 7 tomorrow night.
The East League Roundup. The East League Roundup.
Yes, for listeners in the Borders, we bring you a look at the East Leagues involving Borders teams, starting with East League 1, and Langham are at home to Dunbar, who have started their season with 2 wins. Langham won their only game so far at Ross High. So here's the news from Milltown, from Langham head coach Craig Hislop.
Last week we had a week off with a odd number of teams in our league. The previous Saturday we had a good win on the road up at Ross High. Very pleasing for our first performance, winning the game by 36 points to 7. This weekend's opponents will be a different affair. Dunbar, who put 90 points on Ross High in the previous week, won against Broughton, the league leaders. So it's definitely got to be a big challenge for us, and both teams will be looking to keep their unbeaten run this season. Squad-wise, it's not looking healthy, as we've lost both our front row props this week, a wedding due to injury, and we lost another guy also in our back division that's going to the same wedding. So frustrating as a coach, but signing of the times nowadays. So it's got to be a test for the squad, but confident we'll go well. So you see what happens.
Langham against Dunbar, the mouth-watering tie from East 1. Well, in East 2, Earlston have another home match against Pennycook, and as head coach Cammy Hill told us, it could be a case of which Pennycook will turn up at the Hogg tomorrow.
Last weekend was a return of East 2 rugby at the Hogg. First time in 6 years, I believe it is, that the club's been at this level. So it's good to see that we're going in the right direction, and obviously the promotion last year to get here has been really good, and a bit of excitement about the club throughout pre-season. And then the added addition of getting Hawick wins as your first home game of the season as a border derby was really, really exciting as well. We always knew going into this game that Hawick were going to be a good test, finishing 3rd last season. Never known really what sides sort of come out of Hawick. We played Lindian a couple of seasons ago, and obviously last season as well. They're always really good at producing youth players, and that really showed with the Quins on Saturday. They had a good few young lads in that squad that have got a real good real good bit of potential about them. And we were fortunate enough to come away with a 25 points to 20 win. When I say fortunate, we were pretty error-strewn. We gave away a lot of penalties that in other situations maybe would have cost us a game, but we managed to dig deep, hold out for the win. Now we'll turn our focus to Pennycook this weekend. Last time we played them would be pre-season last year, and obviously got a defeat that day, but it's another club that's quite dependent on whether their army contingent's available. That makes a massive difference on what sort of Pennycook squad you're going to face, so it'll be interesting to see what comes down at the weekend after them narrowly losing to Leith. Hopefully we can carry on our good start to the season, and we're looking for another win this weekend.
Well, also in East League 2, Hawick Harlequins are at home to Christophin, and Quinn's captain this season is Liam Smith.
Hoping to bounce back for last week's defeat to Eddleston. We've got a good number of boys to pick through this week. Hoping for a similar squad, similar strength hopefully. Christophin had a win last week, so hopefully we can win against them at the first game up the park at home. So see how it goes, bring on the weekend.
Liam Smith looking to bounce back from last weekend's loss at Earlston in their first home game of the season. In East League 3, Duns entertain the Caledonian Thebans at Castle Park, while Hawick Lindeen welcome Edinburgh to Volunteer Park for their first home game of the season. And we can hear from Lindeen's Kieran Murphy.
Already at this early stage could be a massive one, going by results last weekend and where both teams finished last season, second and third. So Edinburgh Northern at the weekend won 73-3 against Trinity. Obviously showed very good defensively as well as attack, and we're off the back of a good 55-12 win down at Duns. So it looks like both teams will be up there again, and this could be pivotal in where we kind of end up come the end of the campaign. So it's certainly a game that we are targeting a win, but it will be difficult, and we know that. So we have to work hard to kind of get that. In terms of the team, I think we're missing 4 that was in the squad last week. Missing Zach Stewart, he broke his thumb against Duns. Ryan Muir's out with a head injury. Michael Boyle is unavailable as well. I know Jack Wilson's back, and Davy Leach is available. Justin Tate's also available, and there's a few boys that obviously missed out in the squad last weekend that they'll be wanting to get back in this week. So it's been a good day at training on Tuesday. Plenty of numbers again, and which is great to see. Everybody's wanting to fight to get back in there and kind of work hard. So that can only bode well for how we do on a Saturday. So everyone knows that, and I'm sure the coaches and the captain will put that forward to everybody that this weekend it needs to be maximum effort to get the result.
Kieran Murphy from Hawick Lindeen. Well, another bumper podcast today. Hope you've enjoyed the insight into Scottish club rugby, but that's it for today. Do share the broadcast to anyone who cares about Scottish club rugby, and from Robin and me, bye for now.